Hi, I'm Phil Stokes from SentinelOne. I'm a macOS researcher focusing on macOS malware, platform vulnerabilities, anything really that affects the Mac. And today I thought I would do a quick demo for you guys about a particular technique that I wrote about in a recent post called How to Bypass XProtect on Catalina. Now, in the post, I wrote about a bunch of different techniques that you can use to get past Catalina, and also went into quite a bit of detail about why we have to do it and some of the caveats that you've got to look out for. So please do go check out the post if you're going to follow this in more detail. But in the demo today, what I wanted to do was just to look at one particular technique that I talked about in the post. And it's kind of pertinent because we've just had an update to XProtect. I think we're on 2.1.1.6 right now. And in this update, XProtect have added a new rule. And whereas previous rules had pretty much all had a file size condition, this rule doesn't. And so one of the techniques I talk about in the post is about how to use the file size condition to get past XProtect. But with this new rule, which detects a particular piece of Prerequisites malware, that won't help. So you're going to need to use one of the other techniques that I talk about. And so I thought I'd show one of those in this webcast. So that's what we're going to do. And to do this, you're going to need a VM instance, of course. I've got one set up here. This is a Parallels desktop one. And you're going to need a copy of the malware. This is a copy of a recent variant of Prerequisites. You should have gone back to VirusTotal, sorry. You can get that if you search for Aposys daemon in VT. If you've got a VT account, you should find that fairly easily. This is actually the second one I'm using here. If you don't have a VT account, there are other public malware repositories you should be able to get it from. And actually, if you look for a previous post I did called How to Reverse macOS Malware on SentinelOne.com, you should find some links to various places where you can get macOS malware from. Okay, so let's assume you've got your malware. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is, and you've got your VM instance up and running, of course, I'm just going to show what happens when we try to launch this. So you can see it's blocked by XProtect. This is the XProtect dialog box, report malware to Apple to protect others. Let me cancel that. And in earlier versions of macOS, all we had to do here was remove what we call the quarantine bit. So if I just list the extended attributes of this, you'll see there is this com.apple.quarantine bit, and that used to be the only thing that kicked off XProtect on 10.14 and earlier versions. And if you removed that, then XProtect wouldn't bother scanning your file. On Catalina, that's all changed, and if we remove this quarantine bit, which we can just prove, okay, now it's gone, you'll see that nevertheless we still get blocked by XProtect. So that's why we need to find some way around it if we want to see what this malware does. Okay, now in my case I need to revert this VM back to the state it was before I tried to launch it, because even if I use a technique to get around XProtect, now that XProtect has seen this once on this particular file on this particular VM, it'll remember that it's already marked it as malware. So I'm just going to quickly revert this back to its earlier state. I'll just take a moment. And once that's ready, which it is now, we can go back. Okay. So XProtect hasn't seen this again, and the quarantine bit is still attached to that as well at the moment. Okay, so we've got our malware, and the first thing you're going to want to do is have a look at the rules in XProtect. So the easiest way to find this is just to do md find XProtect, unless you already know off by heart where it is. I can never bother to remember the path actually. And from all those results, just look for the one that's got core services in it. Should be in here somewhere. There it is. So I'll just copy that, CD, paste it, and then CD again into the resources folder. And if we list that, you'll see this is the rules that we're interested in, XProtect Yara. So I'll just open that in Vi so we can take a look at it. Okay, so the Yara rules, there's a couple of private rules, which are kind of global rules at the beginning, and then come the malware definitions. Now at the moment, Apple are putting the newest rules at the top just after the private rules. They'll probably change that now, I said this. But the most recent rule is this one. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I'm going to check whether this is the rule that matches this malware, because this is a fairly recent sample. And if I open up a new terminal window, what I'm going to do is just see what these strings say. And I can do that by echoing those. Oops. Didn't want to do that. Somehow missed my copy. So I can do that just by echoing these strings and then piping them into XXD, and then use the R and the P switch to reverse these back to normal text. So this one says lumberjack. The second one says, let's pipe into XXD. The second one says I am root, and the third one says SH executor. These are likely class names because of the starting with the capital letters. This is probably a string of some sort used somewhere in the code. I recognize Lumberjack as some kind of external framework, logging framework, I think. So what I want to do, now that I've seen what these strings are, I want to see if they're in my sample. So I'm going to go to the file, the folder that's got the binary in it. Let's just check we are where we think we are. Okay, and then I'm just going to run strings on the binary, and I'm going to egrep each one of these to just check. And the last one. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, great. So we've got all three. The rule actually says we only need 2 of them, and we also need it to be a macOS. So let's just check that the file is a macOS, because sometimes we see Mac malware that are scripts. Yes, it is. Okay, so this is definitely the rule that's matching our sample. We've got not just 2, but 3 of the strings, and we've got the right file size. Sorry, the right file type there. So now that I know that this is in fact the rule that I've got to beat, what I've got to do is patch this binary to avoid these at least 2 of these strings. So I'm going to do that by opening the binary in Vi, which immediately looks like a load of gobbledygook, and then we will execute XXD from within Vi. And to do that, you need to put % and exclamation mark and then XXD. And that takes us into a kind of hex editor view. And then we can search. Let's search for Okay. So here's that capital L and lumberjack. It actually starts here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that capital L 4C to the byte after it is 75, which is a U. I'm just going to change that to 75 as well. So you won't see the change reflected on the right hand side on the string side until after you save out, but we're not going to do that yet. Be careful of doing that. I always do that in Vi. Let's also have a look for that I am root string. There it is down the bottom. And again, as I say, you only need to change one byte. If you change the first byte of the string, then the whole string will just be ignored. So I is 69 in hex. I'm going to change it to 61, same as A, so it's just 6161. Now I'm done with my patching. I need to revert this back to binary format. Don't forget we need percent. Oops. We need percent and exclamation mark to call XXD, and this time we need the R switch. We don't need a P switch with it, and that gets us back into the binary. Now we can save out, and we should be good to go. And did we remove the quarantine bit yet? I can't remember. Let's execute this in the debugger, because that's normally the way we want to do that with malware anyway, just to work through what it's doing. And just wait for that. Okay, and then let's launch the process and see what happens. Oops. Process launch. Silly me. Aha. Okay, so this is just LLDB. Get rid of that. Okay, so we've got a different dialog box this time. This is not the same as the one we had before. This is from notarization, and that's because I didn't remove the quarantine bit again. So let's just get rid of that one. Let's just quit the debugger. So if we just have a check of that to make sure my theory is right. Yes, the quarantine bit's still there because we didn't do that after we reverted the virtual machine. So let's remove that. Let's try the debugger again. Targets keep being created. Process launch is the correct command. Okay, great, fantastic. There you go. So looks like we are launched. And yep, we can move into disassembly, and we've now successfully got our malware up and running and passed both XProtect and Gatekeeper and notarization on macOS Catalina. So that's how you do it. As I say, in the blog post there's a few gotchas to look out for. You might need to stop in the debugger and revert those strings, for example. You may need to change some registries or jump past some methods if you've patched some part of the binary that's necessary. But I go into all the gotchas in the blog post, so please go and have a look at sentinelone.com/blog/how to, I can't remember the full title, how to bypass XProtect on macOS Catalina. I'll put a link underneath anyway. Okay, thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed this, and see you next time. Bye for now.